So joining us is Rangoli. Rangoli has been a data journalist, having transitioned from a professional journalist role from the past 2.5 years, during which she has published in Hindustan Times, Mint, and Caravan. Being proficient in skills like R, Python, and Excel, she uses them on a daily basis to churn eye-grabbing stories. From analyzing IPO numbers to Ola electric vehicle registrations, data journalism has allowed Rangoli to go beyond the journalistic norms. So let's invite Rangoli to talk about this very interesting topic of scope of data journalism for developers. So let's hear it from Rangoli.
Hi everyone. So I've generally spoken to journalists about how they can code or they can work their way around data to find data stories. But this is the first time I'm actually talking to developers about how they can excel in a data journalism field. So I hope I am able to contribute something beneficial to everyone who's listening. In my talk, I will basically be telling you about data journalism through basics of journalism. So the first rule of journalism is you have to answer the 4 W's and 1H. 4 W's are what, where, when, why, and 1H is how. These are the 5 questions that you have to answer in each story in order for it to be a journalistic piece. So in this talk, I will be telling you about the 4 W's and 1H of data journalism. It is not a rocket science. It is not something that needs specific specialization. Even with basics of Python, R, JavaScript, and HTML, developers like you guys can do wonders with in journalism. So I'll begin with the first W as to what is data journalism. Journalism is not just writing something that you think should be put out. It has to be each and every story that is put out has to be timely, has to be something new, has to be something that is not already been said, that is something not already been said. And most importantly, it has to be backed by facts. So normally what happens is when we're writing a story, you talk to people, you talk to, say, other reporters, you talk to specialists, you talk to politicians, and you just write what they are saying. And you talk to 3-4 people so that you can verify the information and then you write it. In data journalism, you end up talking to the information, and information is not just numbers. Some people think that data is just numbers, but data is anything and everything. Even when you walk down to your grocery store, that is also counted as data. Even when you watch a movie show, even when you buy a ticket, even when you're sleeping, the number of hours that you're sleeping can be counted as data, and all of that put together can be used to analyze trends that can be written as stories. That is what data journalism is. Now, where does coding here comes in? How do developers help? Developers can help in gathering the data. B, they can help in automating a lot of information gathering process. So something like web scraping, something like when you are putting together the data, when you're cleaning the data, a lot of that can be automated using programming language in order to write a story. And then you can also use different softwares. You can also write codes to link two different data sets, put them together to find anecdotes from one data set to another. So that is where developers come in. The other W is when do we need data journalism? So I think the most important thing why we need data journalism is to find an outlier. So what does an outlier mean? So for example, let's take the COVID data. So in the COVID data set, if you want to understand which part of Rajasthan or which part of Delhi, for example, has the highest number of cases that are rising. If you talk to, say, a medical expert, they would tell you, say, in Jaipur, there are the most number of cases that are rising, or in South Delhi, the most number of cases are rising. If you talk to a politician, he would just say, no, in Delhi there are no cases, it's just fake, all of that. But when you look at the data, is when you would find that it's not actually Ajmer, Jaipur, but it's actually Ajmer where the number of COVID cases are rising the most. That is where the need of data journalism arises. And COVID has actually increased the requirement for a data journalist. But even other than COVID, even other than something as big as the pandemic, there are small things that have data to play with them. And it's not just limited to IPOs or vehicle registrations. Even something small like what is being searched the most on Google can be used as a data to understand the dynamics of a particular thing, of a particular organization, how they're moving forward. So that is where that is the most important need of data journalism. When we talk about the need to transform something abstract into something everybody can understand, is when you look at a lot of information, when you look at GBs of data, when you look at something very technical. So suppose somebody is writing about airlines. Somebody is writing about how the aircraft movement has changed over the pandemic. It's a very detailed out thing to know, what kind of airport it is coming from, what kind of airport it is going to, and all of that can be understood by somebody who has already been reading or working with the aircrafts, or B, somebody who's already writing about airlines from last 10-15 years. But with data, even a person who has not been reading or writing about airlines can get a basic understanding that, okay, so after the pandemic, something like staycations are coming up, and people are preferring to fly to tier 2 cities to stay there for some time, maybe in the hilly areas or maybe down south in India, and just live there for a while and also work and not step out. So that is something that can be easily understood from the data that is put out by the airlines department. That is what is the power of data journalism, and that is where data journalism arises. The third important reason for data journalism in today's scenario is when we want to understand the gravity of a situation. So had it not been, I'll again take the COVID example because this is something everybody can relate to. Had it not been the numbers, had it not been the trends, we wouldn't have understood the gravity of the pandemic. Had it not been the numbers, we wouldn't know which part, which city, which ward of our country has been impacted the most. That's the other W, that when does the need for data journalism arise? Now, where do we need data journalism? Is it just specific to finance? No. We need data journalism everywhere. Data journalism does not. So a lot of people ask me, okay, Rangoli, you are a data journalist, but which areas do you cover? So areas in journalistic languages are called beats. So what beats do you cover? So before I was a data journalist, I was working as a local reporter, and so I would cover regular events, I would cover political events, I would interview celebrities, and most importantly, I was covering education, both university and school education in Jaipur. I had more knowledge related to education than to say like politics or say development or rural development, etc. But when it comes to data journalism, the data is available for each and every area. Each and every department in our country puts out some or the other data. Not just the department, even the big companies like Facebook, Google, Twitter are putting out a lot of information and open source data sources, open source data that can be used to understand and write about a particular thing that you're interested in. So all kinds of beats need data journalism. So in case of economics, like obviously economics and finance is something that involves genuine numbers, like public finance, inflation, price indexes. These are just numbers put out by RBI. These are just straightforward numbers. You download the table and you can see what is happening. Even in finance, you can look at the banks, you can look at the currencies, you can look at the investments, you can look at different company accounts, and look at what is the trend being like. That is what is there in economics and finance. But even in education, health and politics, the numbers are there. So in education, for example, look at the types of enrollment that has happened, the kinds of grades that have, even the grades are put out. So you can look at boys versus girls grades, who is excelling better in education, which part of the country is excelling better in education, what age do children generally drop out in the rural areas or even in urban areas. These are some of the basic stories, these are some of the basic ideas that you can look at through data. And with specific skills, the most basic skill that is required for this is something that you already have, which is coding. So a lot of this needs to be scraped from the websites, and a lot of this data is in PDFs format, in images format, in weird Excel formats, and they're not cleaned properly. So with the skills that you guys have, easy to clean them and easy to put the data together and then make beautiful structures out of it. Even in entertainment, there are so many websites that put out data information related to various artists, actors, actresses, various directors. So you can put it all together. Look at IMDb. IMDb is the biggest source of open source data platform. And so you can scrape the data from IMDb and look at what kind of directors are churning out the highest rated movies. This is just one of the examples of where you can use data journalism. So the answer in one line to that question is just everywhere. So why should you do data journalism? Now, a lot of you would be thinking, hey, I have these amazing skills and I can use them to maybe create a product. I can use them to put out a better service. I can use them to do a startup. So why should I look at data journalism? So here's the thing. If you are interested in journalism, if you are interested in writing, if you are interested in research and analytics, then journalism has a huge career growth scope for developers. Each news organization is now looking for a developer, is now looking for journalists with coding skills, because data-driven journalism is the future. Like journalists, not just the upcoming journalists, but journalists who have been in this field for quite some time need to know basics of Excel and coding in order to create a niche in journalism, create their own specific space and speciality in journalism. So if you are interested in that, then you should definitely go for it. And the most important reason why a developer should go do data journalism is because, in addition to improvement in your coding skills, the profession allows you to be creative in the sense better visual. You can create amazing visualizations, you can look at different data sources, you can think about different areas where analyze the data and put out the information. Obviously, the profession also allows you to work on your analytical skills, because there are big sets of data. There are machine learning programs that you can write to predict the future of say a general election, when a particular area loses out water, for example, and also makes the whole idea of coding without being very boring or without being very blunt or very mundane. So that is one of the major reasons why you should do data journalism. And the other important reason is that with the kind of work that you will do, whoever will read your work will not only know the information, but can be impacted to do something about the situation. Your work will impact hundreds of readers. There will be so many readers who would be reading your stories, and that can lead to some impact from the government, from the respected stakeholders. You're also doing something good for the community. You're making an impact with your coding skills. So that is why it is very important that you should do data journalism. How can you do data journalism? That is the main question, right? I want to do data journalism, but I have never experienced anything in journalism, and I don't know where to start from. So you can, in order to get a sense of how a news is developed, or how a topic is chosen, like how a news decides that okay, this will be published. You can sign up for quick journalism courses. There are some online courses that you can look at. There are some 1 year courses. Most of the journalism postgrads are 1 year courses. Not even 1 year, they're just 10 months. You can go physically and learn if you have the time. If you don't, you can just do, look at online courses and see, get a sense of how things are done. Then if you can also apply for programs like Night Lab at Northwestern, and there are other online programs and scholarship driven programs that you can look at. You can also apply for internships. Most of the organizations are looking for developers, are looking for data journalists, people who are savvy with data, in order to improve their own data analytics space. So you can apply for internships in your local newspapers, in or media outlets. You can and see how things go ahead. If all of that doesn't work, you still have a chance. You can do your own thing. So in order, the first rule of finding a data story is to read what is happening. It's very important to read news on a daily basis. Just read the news for a week, for 2 weeks, see what is happening, what people are talking about, and then from that you can pick a topic and try looking for data sources for that. So some of the very easy data sources to look at are Vahan. I'm talking in context of India, because since I've worked mostly with the Indian sources. So if you want to look at vehicle sales, the Vahan dashboard is very nice. If you want to look at company accounts, you will look at MCA. If you want to look at public finances, the RBI is the best source. So you can just pick up some of these data sources and try to cut the data into various charts, like state wise, maybe, or maybe gender wise, or maybe slab wise. If you're looking at the financing, you can look at income tax slabs, for example. So you can look at all of these places and see, try to bring out your own analysis, try coding out your own features, try coding out your own graphics, and then set up a blog post where you can publish your own analysis and try to send it to editors. And after a few after a few stories, I'm sure somebody or the other will reach out to you, and you can take it further from there. So that is one of the main source how you can do data journalism. Now I will just give you some interesting examples of how you can do interesting entertainment stories and other graphics through data. So I'm sure all of you have seen one of the Bond movies. So this website 007.com gives you data, gives you information related to all Bond films till now. When you scrape this data, you can get it into this format. So it has a lot of things, lot of cuts that you can look at. So there is a movie name, there is cast, producer, director, release date, box office. There are tons of other things, that the kind of vehicles that I used, the kind of locations that I used. You can look at all of these and then convert it into this. This is the final output. Which Bond movie has performed the best in the box office, the kind of artists that have put out the best box office listings, and different countries where the box office collections have been the highest. So this is just one example of how you can churn out great stuff from data journalism. This is it from my side, and I am up for any questions that you guys have.
So one thing I wanted to understand that is that you mentioned that there were many beats that you follow in journalism, and for data journalism you tend to follow everything. But I want to know which one of these so-called beats actually gets the most traction in terms of data journalism.
Okay, that's a very interesting question. I think people are most interested in if you talk about something related to their own lives. So, for example, I wrote a story on how the commute has changed post pandemic. So that saw the most attraction, where I spoke about flight movements, where I spoke about there is this Google mobility data which talks about movement to parks, movement to recreation places, movement to retail stores, etc. So I spoke about that. So this is just one example when people use data to talk about something that they can relate to, is what gathers the most. So like these days the entertainment stories are gathering the most traction. So imagine talking about entertainment, talking about movies, talking about say Salman Khan using data. So that is something that gathers the most traction.
So just following up on this question, so from what I understand, people tend to read stories which can impact them, as you mentioned. So that I believe that reason behind this could be because they use that data journalism piece to actually make decisions about certain things. So have you ever used some piece of your own, created something to make some decision for yourself?
No, I have not used something for my own, but like for my family, I keep telling them, oh, the COVID cases are rising there, or this is what is happening in Diwali, or this is the air pollution that is happening. So I keep making my family aware of what is happening around them. So yeah, so this is what data journalism is, a very evidence-based journalism. So everything that is claimed, that is written in a story, is actually backed by data. So everything is in front of your eyes. You can actually see that, okay, so this is happening. So that is why it's the most impactful. It impacts everybody who's reading it.
I believe gone are the days when journalists just used to throw some sort of claim at us, and now we want it to be backed by data all the time.
Absolutely. Even the readers, when there are stories about random claims that the politicians make during their rallies, or otherwise when they make random claims about the things that they've done, about the impact that they've made, the readers are they want something to see. They just don't want to believe them. So they want reports. They want numbers. They want data about how what has happened.
So pertaining to the developer side of it, what are some of the tools that you actually use to crunch the numbers?
Python and R are the basic tools that I use. So in Python, I use pandas. I use Beautiful Soup. In R, there is something called dplyr that I use on a regular basis. And ggplot, ggplot is my go-to thing for making graphics. So these are very basic things that are related to developers, and they help out a lot in data journalism. So this is what I use.
All right, awesome. I'll just post all of these tools so that our attendees can use them, and maybe you can share any repository links or some data visualization code so that we can also share it with our attendees, and they can also maybe create a journalistic story of their own.
Sure,
Thank you so much for joining in, Rangoli.
I'm glad, and I hope everybody who's listening this will consider doing data journalism at least as a side thing, as a hobby, or something like that.